Well, thank you very much. I always know, I used to joke that I knew it was going to be a long introduction if somebody started out. Mayor Anderson was born in Logan, Utah, but very appropriate tonight. I love being back here. I haven't been in this building since I was 7 years old. We used to come down for the Easter egg hunts where we'd line up all around the sidewalk, around the tabernacle. Really great memories, and a real surprise to me, wonderful surprise, as my Aunt Jane surprised me and showed up here tonight. So great to have her here tonight. I'm honored to address the Utah Bioneers and thank this distinguished gathering for its admirable and tireless advocacy on behalf of critical environmental causes. And what some great inspirational stories we've heard tonight about the people in this community that have been so committed to making this a safer, healthier, more enjoyable world through good environmental practices. The Utah Bioneers, along with the newly formed Cache Regional Council and numerous other important organizations, play a central role in encouraging conservation, sound ecologically minded practices, and climate protection in communities throughout Utah. The outreach work of the Bioneers stands out among all the state chapters of the organization, as this conference is the only Bioneers gathering in the country that is making its programming available at more than one location. So thank you for all you're doing on behalf of this region, the entire state of Utah, and ultimately our planet. And thanks to all the great leaders that work so hard on behalf of the Utah Bioneers. Together, all of us in the United States, and indeed people throughout the world, are facing enormous challenges. The warming of our planet, due in large part to the burning of fossil fuels, dependence on foreign oil, much of it from terrorist-sponsoring or otherwise dangerous authoritarian regimes, dramatic destabilizing fuel price fluctuations, dangerously poor air quality, and major public health crises. Either we delay, obstruct, and wait for others to take action with disastrous results, or we pull together at all levels of government, in business and in each of our individual lives, to develop and implement effective solutions. Developing and implementing solutions to these serious problems is at the core of real leadership. Recognizing that each of us must do our part, and that in doing so, we can inspire effective action by others, we launched the Salt Lake City Green Program in 2001, an environmental program so comprehensive that it covers dog waste, nuclear waste, and just about everything else in between. A major component of Salt Lake City Green is our climate protection campaign, which has achieved very positive results, many of which can be replicated by other governmental entities, businesses, and individuals. Our focus has been on finding the most effective solutions to our most pressing challenges, and in taking advantage of the tremendous positive opportunities currently available to reduce global warming pollutants, gain independence from foreign oil, enhance national security, avoid destabilizing fuel price fluctuations, improve local air quality, and enhance the public health. These challenges and opportunities all converge at the point of the same two fundamental solutions. First, greater efficiencies, conservation, and second, utilization of clean, renewable sources for the energy that we do need. We are able to inhabit the earth because of a delicate balance of heat-trapping gases in the atmosphere, which acts much like a blanket. Sun rays travel through the atmosphere to the earth, where some of them are then reflected back. Some of those reflected rays travel through the atmosphere back into space. The heat-trapping gases in the atmosphere capture some of the radiation and reflect it back to the Earth. An accumulation of too many global warming gases, such as carbon dioxide and methane, adds immensely to the atmospheric blanket, causing dangerous global warming. Since 1958, an observatory atop Mount Mauna Loa, Hawaii, has taken measurements reflecting a shocking increase of more than 19% in the average annual concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere during just the past 45 years. You can see the dramatic increase in carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. And think, just in 45 years, we've seen that steady and accelerating growth in the concentration of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is the cause, directly or indirectly, of about 80% of all global warming. And this gets to the nub of the real problem in the long term, carbon dioxide remains in the atmosphere for about 100 years. So there's a tremendous cumulative effect with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. In 1 year alone now, the burning of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, releases a total of over 21 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And when you consider that's every year now, that many billions of tons, and it stays there for over 100 years, so it just keeps building up that carbon blanket in our atmosphere. Tracing the trajectory shown here forward reflects a doubling of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere from the early 20th century to the end of the 21st century. There's never been that kind of increase in carbon dioxide ever. They've been able to go back 800,000 years now with ice core sampling, never anything close to this kind of increase in the carbon dioxide concentration in our atmosphere. To stabilize carbon dioxide emissions at double the level at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, which doubling is widely considered the threshold of disastrous climate change, we will have to reduce carbon dioxide emissions by at least 70% by the middle of this century. That's an ambitious goal, but it can be accomplished. The enormous increase in greenhouse gases has caused a very significant increase in average global temperatures. 20 of the 21 warmest years on record occurred during the past 25 years. Due primarily to the burning of fossil fuels, our planet's average temperature, and this is around the globe and it varies widely, but the average temperature has increased about 1 degree Fahrenheit since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And we always talk about the Industrial Revolution in this context because that's when we started burning all these fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas. Now that 1 degree Fahrenheit average temperature may not seem like much, but it is indeed a trend that spells utter catastrophe for our Earth and all of its inhabitants if we do not reverse it. The scientific evidence is conclusive. What we are experiencing is not simply a natural phenomenon, as you'll hear sometimes from people who continue to try to say this isn't really a problem. It's not just a natural phenomenon with a shift in temperature consistent with variations occurring over thousands of years. Indeed, from ice core samples, scientists have determined that the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere never exceeded 300 parts per million in the 650,000 years prior to the Industrial Revolution. And in fact, there was a test just recently, as I mentioned a minute ago, they've gone back 800,000 years now. Never did the concentration of CO2 ever reach 300 parts per million in the atmosphere. Now, after burning enormous amounts of fossil fuels, emitting unprecedented amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, the concentration of carbon dioxide as of 2005 was 381 parts per million. So never In the 800,000 years, did it ever get to 300 parts per million? In 2005, the measurement was 381 parts per million, and it's rising rapidly. The actual temperature increases since the late 19th century are shown here by the steeply rising red line. The 20th century's 10 warmest years all occurred in the last 15 years of the century, and last year, 2005, was the warmest year on record. Scientists predict that if current trends continue, average global surface temperatures, and again, we're talking just about the averages, under the best case scenario, which would still be disastrous, it would be approximately 1 degree Fahrenheit during the next 50 years and 2.5 degrees during the next 100 years. And under the worst case scenarios, reflected by the green line here, average temperatures could rise approximately 4 degrees Fahrenheit during the next 50 years and 10 degrees in the next century. Now, as I mentioned, I've been speaking to this point only of average global temperatures. However, the increases in temperature vary dramatically at different latitudes. For instance, Antarctica provides the most alarming examples of melting ice due to global warming. Of course, it's hard to determine what's most alarming because now we see Greenland melting and we see the Arctic ice cap melting at such a rate that we may not have ice in the Arctic region by the end of this century. Getting back to the Antarctic, 3 enormous pieces of Antarctic ice shelf have disintegrated just since 1995. In February 2002, the Larsen B ice shelf, about 1,250 square miles, more than 10 times the size of Salt Lake City, broke up in only 35 days. This is how the polar ice cap in the Arctic appeared in 1979. And remember, there had been substantial melting of the polar ice cap before then. But this is how it appeared in 1979, and this is how much it had melted by 2003, more than 20%. And the ice that does remain is only about 60% as thick as it was just 40 years earlier. If current warming trends continue, little, if any, of the Arctic ice cap will be left at the end of this century. This could spell the extinction of many plants and animals, including, of course, polar bears, which depend upon lots of sea ice for food. The Arctic is warming far faster than the rest of the globe. Since the 1950s, Alaska has warmed by an average of 4 degrees Fahrenheit. Warming has been much more profound during the winter months, with temperatures warming as much as 3 degrees per decade over the last 30 years. Those are only averages. In parts of Alaska and Western Canada, winter temperatures have increased by as much as 7 degrees Fahrenheit in the last 50 years. These temperature increases have already had devastating consequences. I was just up in Anchorage, Alaska a few weeks ago, and we went up to the Exit Glacier, this gigantic glacier. And as we were driving up there, there were signposts along the road. They started more than a mile before we got to the glacier, showing the years when the glacier was down to that point. And now you drive up along the road seeing how much it had melted. And it's melting rapidly now, far faster than ever on record. Also, we saw that there were millions of acres of forest destroyed throughout Alaska because of the pine bark beetle, which now survives through the winter. It used to be that winter temperatures were enough to control the pine bark beetle, so they weren't able to do this kind of damage, and the destruction of the forest has been absolutely devastating. Now, closer to home, located on the border of northwestern United States and Canada is the stunning Glacier National Park. And we all know what Glacier National Park was named after. From 1850 to 1993, there was a 73% reduction in the area of Glacier National Park covered by glaciers. In the 19th century, the park featured about 150 glaciers. Just more than a century later, there are now only 35. Here we see the astounding decrease in Shepherd Glacier from 1913 to 2005. The melting of Grinnell Glacier between 1910 and 1998. And the devastation of the Cheney Glacier from 1911 to 2005. Scientists predict that at the present rate of warming, there will be no glaciers in Glacier National Park by 2030. The name will be the sole reminder of what once was. The melting of polar ice caps and glaciers, together with higher sea temperatures, has caused oceans to rise. Globally, sea level during the last century has increased 4 to 8 inches. Tuvalu, a Pacific island, is already disappearing under rising ocean waters, an early warning of what is to come to coastal areas around the world. The entire coastal population throughout the world may become environmental refugees. A rise of up to 1 meter in sea level, which has been predicted by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, would submerge major coastal regions around the world, including several major metropolitan areas in the United States. As you see here around the Florida area, imagine those areas inundated, flooded by water, and all of the environmental refugees that will be driven from those lands. It will cover 17.5% of Bangladesh in an area where 13 million people currently reside, and 6% of the Netherlands. Global warming also results in killer heat waves, much like what we saw in this country this last summer. In 2003, the August European heat wave broke all records for heat-related deaths. There were 35,000 deaths, with the death toll in France alone nearly 15,000. The risk of major heat waves has doubled due to climate change. Although heat waves may not be as dramatic in terms of the news, in terms of the appearance, as other climatic disasters, in the United States, heat-related deaths exceed those from all other weather-related events combined. Droughts. The introduction of mosquito-borne diseases in areas where mosquitoes were previously non-existent, and the killing of entire forests by beetles that were previously kept under control by cooler temperatures have all occurred and will become more frequent and more severe because of global warming. 156 nations, including every single major industrialized nation except the United States and Australia, have signed on to the Kyoto Agreement and are taking aggressive measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We know that the Kyoto goals are just a modest beginning, and that carbon dioxide emissions must be reduced far more than called for by Kyoto if we are to reverse the trend toward disastrous climate disruption. But as with many of our longtime allies around the world, many of us in the United States do recognize the importance of collaborative worldwide action to meet the challenge of climate change. If the prospect of devastating droughts, floods, hurricanes, killer heat waves, and mass starvation and other climatic disasters are not enough to get some people's attention, then perhaps they will respond to the worsening quality of wine and catastrophic impacts on the ski industry worldwide. Global warming is threatening the world's ski resorts. Downhill skiing could disappear altogether at some resorts, while at others a retreating snow line will cut off base villages from their ski runs as early as 2030. Although those impacts are certainly trivial in comparison to the human misery and extinction of species caused by climate change, they are certainly harbingers of human and ecological crises to come. A vast scientific consensus testifies to the reality and danger of disastrous climate disruption. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, known as the IPCC, was established in 1988 by the World Meteorological Organization and the United Nations Environment Program. It is the largest scientific collaboration in history, with over 1,000 scientists from over 140 nations participating. The IPCC's third assessment report, Climate Change 2001, was a product of contributions from hundreds of scientists from the international community assessed by the world's experts on global warming. The report, which is actually quite conservative in as much as it is a consensus document drafted by scientists, it concludes that the Earth's climate is warming at an accelerated rate and that human activities are to blame. And this report is consistent with every national scientific academy report that's been issued on the subject. At the G8 summit that was presided over by Tony Blair in 2005, even our nation's National Science Academy, they joined with science academies from all the other G8 nations as well as several other nations in reiterating it is happening, it's happening at an accelerated pace with tremendously tragic consequences, worse consequences to come, and we can make a difference because the warming is caused primarily because of what we as humans are doing. Primarily the burning of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, and land use practices, primarily deforestation. The world's largest reinsurance companies, that is, the companies that insure insurance companies, agree that climate change is a dangerous risk that urgently needs to be addressed. Peter Hoppe, head of the Georisk division at Munich Re, the world's largest reinsurance company, said, "We have seen dramatic increases in damage from weather events. Something is changing in the atmosphere. There is no other explanation." Swiss Re, the world's second largest reinsurance company, has published several reports outlining the risks of climate change and the business opportunities that exist in combating the problem. These companies understand that their financial survival is at risk because of climatic disasters resulting from global warming. Even the Pentagon, not known as a liberal environmental out there group, has recognized the urgent need to combat climate change. A secret 2004 report entitled An Abrupt Climate Change Scenario and Its Implications for United States National Security was suppressed by the Defense Department but obtained by the media. Influential Pentagon advisor Andrew Marshall commissioned the report, which predicts that abrupt climate change would produce extremely dangerous conditions in many regions of the planet as countries accelerate nuclear weapons development to defend and secure dwindling food, water, and energy supplies. And nuclear weapons in the hands of some of the nuts that are getting them and are developing them now. Imagine when there are these added pressures for resources because of these disasters resulting from climate change. Alarmingly, the report's authors view climate change as a vastly greater threat to global stability than terrorism. Some people in our community have asked why the mayor is focusing on global warming. Their view seems to be that combating global warming should be someone else's responsibility. My response is that we are all going to be severely impacted. Participating cities are making a huge difference, and we're all in this together, and we all need to work cooperatively and to do our part to effectively combat climate change. Despite the abandonment of U.S. national leadership, Salt Lake City is committed to the Kyoto process. In 2002, on the eve of the Salt Lake Winter Olympic Games, I committed Salt Lake City and its municipal operations to meet at least the Kyoto goals. We set a goal to reduce emissions in our city operations by at least 21% below our 2000 baseline, and we committed to do that by the year 2012. Well, we've made tremendous progress in the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. By last year, just 3 years after we made the commitment, we already exceeded our goal, and it was 7 years ahead of 2012. The important point here is that we do have the means to combat catastrophic climate change resulting from global warming. We just need the information. We need to make sure that people are informed. In the last poll I saw in Utah, half the respondents said they didn't think global warming was even happening. So we need to increase consciousness. People need to know the facts. We need the will, and we need the leadership in every area, in our households, in our churches, in our schools, in our cities, our counties, our national government, internationally, in businesses. We need the leadership at every single level and a commitment by all of us to do our part. Because every city, every state, every nation, every business and every individual can do its part in achieving meaningful, substantial reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. Poor local air quality is a problem facing many of our cities. Bad air days in Salt Lake City severely impact the public health, recreational opportunities, sustainable economic development, and overall quality of life. On beautiful smog-free days, Salt Lake City is stunning. The outdoor recreational opportunities are unsurpassed, and the quality of life is extraordinary. These are the sorts of cities we and those who come along in the future deserve. And that's why this isn't just a scientific or a political issue. It is fundamentally a moral issue. As we combat global climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, we will also reduce the criteria air pollutants that harm all of us. Air quality has become a challenge in every large city, and you're going to love this next slide, and in many smaller cities, including my birthplace, Logan, Utah, throughout the world. Every year, approximately 1 million people die prematurely from diseases caused by air pollution. Global warming, air pollution, and dangerous dependence on foreign oil are compounded by our global addiction to oil. This addiction to oil has led to an economic and national security crisis in this country. While U.S. oil production peaked in the early 1970s, since 1973, the United States' dependence on foreign oil has nearly doubled. This has got to be one of the most chilling charts imaginable to see how dependent we've become on foreign oil. Of the 20 million gallons of oil that Americans consume in a single day, we import 15 million gallons. Unfortunately, many of our politicians pursue the least effective and destructive responses to this problem. Drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, a pristine wilderness that is home to plants and animals already struggling to adapt to climate change, is advocated by some as the panacea for all our oil problems. However, by the year 2020, if drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is in full production, and that's about as soon as it could possibly happen, it would reduce our importation of foreign oil from 62% of our national needs to 60% of our national needs, a 2% reduction. The bottom line is opening up this pristine wildlife refuge for drilling will not meaningfully add to our oil supply, nor will it help us become less dependent on foreign sources of oil. The proposal to drill in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge has become a misleading diversion from the pursuit of real, genuine solutions to our nation's energy problems. To meet the most crucial environmental challenges, we must provide leadership, every single one of us, in whatever way we can, in whatever roles we play in our communities. We must empower others to take action, and we must effectively advocate in order to bring others on board. Leadership requires that we become informed about the choices before us and choose wisely, even in the face of vocal opposition. Among our most important choices, do we pursue policies that promote sprawl, dependence on the automobile, traffic congestion, air pollution, and global warming? Or do we pursue cleaner air, preservation of open spaces, reduced burning of fossil fuels, and greater transportation opportunities through mass transit? Another choice that requires informed, effective leadership is whether we continue to rely in many parts of the world on the generation of electricity, as in this area, by dirty, dangerous coal-burning power plants, or will we move toward more electricity production by clean, renewable energy sources such as wind, solar, and geothermal generators? Now, recently, we had some folks who were going to put in a wind farm down at the mouth of Spanish Fork Canyon. They had it all set up. They had the rates worked out with the power company. Everything was great. Instead of coal-burning power plants, clean, renewable wind power. Except the state tax credit for wind farms was allowed to expire, and it killed the deal. Yesterday, I read in the newspaper that the governor's energy advisor, and this is after the governor appointed a blue ribbon task force on climate change, and without consulting with us on that task force, the energy advisor, Laura Nelson, who I think is a wonderful person, I just do not understand what she did. In her recommendation, she let tax policy, these tax proposals for a flat tax, guide her to recommend that the tax credits for each and every one of us that are available for us to put in these clean, renewable energy systems in our homes, whether it's photovoltaic panels to produce electricity or solar water heating panels, as I just put in at my home, that she's suggesting they take, and it's fairly minimal tax credit, it's only up to $2,000, but that they take that tax credit away so that they can accomplish a flat tax. That would take us in absolutely the wrong direction. When the rest of the world is promoting these projects, I was just in Germany, 20% reduction of greenhouse gases in Germany since 1990, and it's primarily because they've got so much wind power, so many solar panels throughout the country on municipal buildings. They pay consumers 3 times the rate for putting up solar panels, and they pay them 3 times the rate to put that electricity into the electric grid than they charge people to take the power out. Those are the kinds of incentives that work, and we have people in state government here who are taking us in absolutely the opposite and very wrong-headed direction. Our first step in city government was to determine everything we could do in every department of city government to operate in a more environmentally sustainable fashion. We completed a sustainability inventory, enabling us to categorize our environmental and economic resources in every department and to ascertain the opportunities we had to make improvements in every area, including water, air quality, and energy use. We started out with those things that we could immediately accomplish and which every governmental entity, business, and each of you as individuals can also do. We replaced our incandescent light bulbs in our city hall. By replacing the energy wasteful light bulbs with high-efficiency compact fluorescents, we saved over $33,000 a year in electric bills and dramatically reduced the amount of electricity coming from coal-burning power plants that we used. By the way, if every household in this country would change just one incandescent bulb over to a fluorescent bulb, the emissions reduction impact would be equivalent to taking 1 million cars off the road. And I urge you, replace all of your incandescent bulbs, because although compact fluorescents cost a bit more in the beginning, they last up to 10 times as long and they use less than 1/3 the amount of electricity. Your electricity bills will be noticeably lower if you utilize compact fluorescents. With part of the money that we saved from converting our lighting, we became the state's largest purchaser of wind power. By taking those two simple measures, didn't cost taxpayers a cent. We actually saved taxpayers money, and we reduced carbon dioxide emissions by over 1,100 tons each year. Then we moved on to our traffic signals by changing to low-energy LED traffic lights, which everyone who has traffic lights could do. We eliminated 500 tons of carbon dioxide emissions and saved $50,000 in lower electrical costs. This is a panorama of the world lit up at night. Most of the energy for these lights comes from electricity produced at coal-burning power plants, which emit tremendous amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We teach our children to turn off the lights at home, so why do we forget those lessons in our offices, in our schools, in our public buildings, including our federally state, municipally owned buildings? In Salt Lake City, we remind our employees to shut off the lights and computers whenever they leave their offices. We're working to create a clean fleet by converting our city's fleet of vehicles through right-sizing and using clean alternative fuels. We've gotten rid of 40 gas-guzzling sport utility vehicles and purchased smaller, more fuel-efficient cars. We now have 89 compressed natural gas vehicles in our fleet. We've purchased 5 new 3-wheel parking enforcement vehicles, like the one in the lower right-hand corner up here, which use less than 1/8 as much gasoline as the vehicles they replaced. And in fact, now we're utilizing some small electric-driven, they look like little chariots that traffic enforcement officers are able to drive around. They get around just perfectly for what they need. In fact, the smaller vehicles, it's more convenient than what they used to have, and we're reducing the emissions dramatically and saving money in the process. We even have a new gas-electric hybrid police car as shown up here, so if any of you come into Salt Lake City, get pulled over and get a ticket from the officer, at least congratulate the officer for driving such an efficient car. We've also passed an ordinance, and it's become tremendously popular. Every city could do this, that allows drivers of low-polluting cars to come in. If their car qualifies, they get a little sticker to put in their back window, and they get to park throughout the city free of charge at meters. They never have to put a coin in a meter again. Acting in our personal lives consistently with our publicly voiced values is, I believe, vital to good leadership. My personal car is a compressed natural gas vehicle, brought it up here tonight, powered by the cleanest internal combustion engine made. It emits almost no criteria pollutants, and I fill it from my gas line at home. Residential gas lines are not necessary, however, in Utah, where we have the second largest number of gas stations with natural gas in the country. And by the way, you've got one here in Logan. Before I drive up, I always call to see that they've still got natural gas, because it's a problem if I run out. But you have a station here. I can actually drive throughout the entire state in my car because there are so many natural gas stations. And the cost savings is enormous. Look at the difference here, $2.89 compared to $1.25. At one point, when regular gasoline was at $3 a gallon, I was paying $1.23 a gallon. As part of our Salt Lake City Green program, we encourage all sorts of alternative forms of transportation. Bicycling improves personal health and helps create a vibrant community. With the use of bicycles across the United States, and from Belgium to Torino, Italy, we delivered a message of peace, youth, and the environment to our successor as the host of the Winter Olympic Games, from Salt Lake City to Torino, Italy, without the use of any fossil fuels. And as this sign reminds us, bicycling doesn't require the burning of any fossil fuels. We've added several miles of bicycle lanes in recent years and installed 45 new bike racks in our downtown area. We also have a pedal pass, which cyclists can use whenever they arrive on their bikes for discounts at participating businesses. Walking is another healthy, clean form of transportation, but one that does not come naturally to many auto-dependent Americans. It also helps create a more interesting, vibrant community. To encourage walking, we must make it as safe as possible. When I came into office, the Salt Lake-Ogden region was ranked as the 12th most dangerous area for pedestrians in the country. To make walking safer, we took several measures, including countdown timers for pedestrians so they know how to get across our very wide streets, how much time they have, pedestrian-actuated overhead and in-pavement lights at mid-block crosswalks, and the notorious red flags at pedestrian crosswalks for people to carry with them as they cross the streets. People made fun of the flags in the beginning, as often happens when we try something new, but now the flags are actually very popular. Last year, we were acknowledged as the most improved city in the United States for pedestrian safety. Okay, now we're going to see if we have sound. Although there was a good deal of derision aimed at me when I first put in the flags, they did become popular enough that my campaign for re-election actually touted the success of the program. In the following Abbey Road scene, I play the role of a pedestrian flag-carrying Paul McCartney, and please notice, bare feet and all. No sound? Let's plug in the other one. Okay. Hang on one second. You got to hear the sound. Got it? Still no sound? I wouldn't keep on this except there's some more audio that we'll need later on. So it was working earlier, just had the static. You know what? There's nothing here. Nothing.
Nothing?
Did you give me the right one? No, I'm not getting anything off this like we were before. It was working before. Let's see, there's nothing. We really need the sound. What happened? This was good before. No, it's this one. But you can't hear it before. I mean, before it was really loud. I don't think you've got it in down there.
Okay.
Well, if we don't get this in a second, I'll just keep moving on. But is it this one? Yep, there. That sounds like. I think we have sound. Okay. Now, if this is too loud, what do I do? Oh, that's good. Perfect.
It's now a lot safer to cross the street in Salt Lake City thanks to one man. Come together. Vote for Rocky.
All right. Just think what we could do if I was going to run for re-election, but buildings are one of the primary sources of energy consumption. There is much we can do to conserve the energy used in buildings. Let me pull this out till I need it again. And I'll just plug it in again. The U.S. Green Building Council's leadership in energy and environmental design, known as LEED rating system, promotes construction of buildings designed for energy and water conservation, material reuse, and improved user comfort and productivity. Our recently completed intermodal transportation hub, the first LEED certified building constructed by Salt Lake City government, will connect light rail, buses, cabs, bicycles, and a future commuter rail in downtown Salt Lake City. I recently issued an executive order requiring that all new buildings owned and operated by Salt Lake City government must be LEED certified at least at the silver level, as must all major renovation projects. I'm also asking that our City Council, which looks like they're going to take forever on this as usual, but that they require all buildings utilizing any city funds be LEED certified. Millions of jobs would be created and energy requirements would be dramatically decreased if our federal government would pursue a policy of retrofitting every federal building more than 20 years old according to high energy performance LEED standards. As with so much else that I've been speaking about tonight, this would be a win-win policy, which would provide enormous economic and environmental gains while providing jobs for working men and women throughout the country and enhancing national security through greater energy independence. Methane is a major global warming pollutant. In fact, it has about 23 times the global warming effect as carbon dioxide. So we want to do everything possible to keep it out of the atmosphere. At our wastewater treatment plant, we capture the methane and utilize it to fuel a cogeneration facility, which produces about 6 million kilowatts of electricity per year, about 1/2 the energy requirements of our wastewater treatment plant. This results in a reduction of the greenhouse equivalent of 3,000 tons of carbon dioxide each year. Also, methane at our landfill has in the past been captured, sucked out of the ground, and simply flared off. Now, the methane is used to provide electricity to a neighboring municipal energy provider, meaning less electricity that has to be generated at a coal-burning power plant. And the reductions there equate to about 17,600 tons less carbon dioxide, the equivalent of carbon dioxide, every single year. Committed to smart growth principles, Salt Lake City looks far into the future to plan our city in ways that promote walkable and transit-oriented communities. There seem to be two things people dislike, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard this. They don't like sprawl, and they say they don't like residential density. Go figure. Many people resist greater residential density in their neighborhoods, but when it is well designed and close to transit, greater density can help make a community more attractive, safe, and environmentally sustainable. My administration takes a transit-first approach to all development projects, including as you may have noticed with regard to the Legacy Highway, opposition to highways pushed by the state legislators so that future growth will not be accompanied by more automobile congestion, more roads, less open space, greater dependence on foreign oil, and increased pollution, but with public transit opportunities afforded by rapid bus systems, heavy rail commuter systems, and light rail, as well as cleaner air, the preservation of open spaces, less traffic congestion, and greater energy independence. All of that translates into better public health, better sustained economic development, better quality of life for all, and greater national security. As I noted earlier, we have made tremendous progress in reducing global warming pollutants, as well as curtailing dependence on foreign oil, reducing criteria air pollutants, promoting national security, and avoiding vulnerability to wildly fluctuating fuel and energy costs. These figures don't count the reductions in greenhouse gas emissions from such initiatives as a major expansion of our recycling program, our transit system, the high-performance building standards, or our other smart growth policies. Much can be done by government at all levels to empower others to contribute toward solutions. We seek in every way possible to empower other governmental entities, local businesses, and individuals to take effective actions to combat global warming and resulting catastrophic climate change. In order to empower local businesses, we created our E2 business program. E2 stands for environmentally and economically sustainable. City staff takes what we have learned about conservation and utilization of cleaner sources of energy to local businesses, inventorying what those businesses are doing and what options they have for waste reduction, recycling, more efficient transportation, conservation of energy and water, and improving air quality. That's just to wake you up in case you're having a problem there. That's still not working.
Salt Lake City has pioneered an environmentally conscious framework that makes it easy for business of all kinds to...
This is Joe LaSalle, who is the owner of the Oasis Cafe and Golden Braid Books in Salt Lake City. He was our very first E2 business and helped finance the rollout of this program. He was so enthusiastic about it during the first year of the program. And he's not going to come back. Let's see.
Salt Lake City has pioneered an environmentally conscious framework that makes it easy for business of all kinds to participate in a program that saves money, energy, and time.
To date, 43 local businesses have become E2 businesses, and we're adding to those just about every week. Our next step was a program for citizens. Salt Lake City E2 citizens register online. We now have, over 300 who have signed up already. There they can establish their carbon footprint, their personal carbon footprint, and learn about the tremendous positive contributions they can make in the areas of transportation, energy, recycling, water, food, and health. We ask citizens to set at least 5 goals in these areas to help minimize their impact on the environment. And if you want to see some of the things you can do, there's a huge checklist. Check out slcgreen.com. Salt Lake City teamed up with our local electric utility to promote the purchase of wind power, getting people to switch from coal-burning production of electricity to clean renewable sources resulted in carbon dioxide emissions reductions equivalent to keeping 2,700 cars off the road each year. In 2001, Salt Lake City began offering a 90-gallon blue recycling bin to residents free of charge. Since the launch of the Blue Bin program, the amount of material recycled in Salt Lake City has increased by 87%. To promote recycling of aluminum cans, we held a competition asking young people to submit ideas for an advertisement to be produced and aired by a local television studio. The winners were a group of Girl Scouts. Here is their winning submission.
There are lots of ways to recycle aluminum cans. Look at this, honey. Look at this toy. I like your dress. Thanks. I recycled it myself. But this is the best way.
Isn't that great? Well, you actually just saw the censored version, and in all their innocence, the Girl Scouts, when they brought this to us, the little boy. Huh. Well, we faced tremendous opposition to our light rail system before it was built in 1999. Notice the headline here reflecting a call for our transit director's termination because he had the audacity to advocate for a light rail system. Now the light rail system has expanded to 19 miles with more to come in the future, including a heavy rail commuter system that will eventually connect cities and towns along a 100-mile corridor. Ridership of our light rail system has far exceeded even the most optimistic projections. On average, 125,000 Utah residents board the bus or light rail trains every day. And this is a great example of leadership. These people hung in there. They were tough. There was adamant opposition. There was a vote, a thumbs down vote on increasing sales tax in Salt Lake County to finance it. These people persevered. They got the first line in. That was so successful. We got the line in up to the University of Utah and now the medical center. And because of the tremendous success, now those who once were so adamantly opposed to it, and by the way, you don't hear that kind of opposition to it anymore. Now we've got it in place. Those people who were opponents are now clamoring for it in their communities. And in 3 of the most conservative counties on planet Earth, Weber, Davis, and Salt Lake counties, the voters, because of the success of this line, voted for a sales tax increase to be devoted solely to transit. And we have another initiative coming up on the ballot in November. Legislature's played around with it, so we don't know exactly what we're voting for, unfortunately. But the polls showed that when the Salt Lake County Council was proposing to have a slight tax increase, it was overwhelmingly supported by the people. So once people see the successes, once they can visualize it, once they see it elsewhere, they understand the benefits that it can bring to their communities and the benefits in their own quality of life. No matter our own successes, we will effectively combat climate change only if we advocate so that other governments, businesses, and individuals join with us in doing what they can to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. We get out as much as we can to speak with young people about sustainability and what each of us can do to make this a better, healthier world. I work with student activists who at the University of Utah led the charge to increase tuition by $1 for the purchase of clean, renewable energy. We organize fun, community-oriented activities to encourage environmentally friendly behaviors. Every year we have Mayor's Bike to Work Day. Our local biking community is now comprised of very effective advocates for more access to safe bicycling opportunities throughout our city. On February 16, 2005, the date on which the Kyoto Accord went into effect, we had a Lick global warming celebration at a local ice cream shop. And we gave away free ice cream and a compact fluorescent bulb to all those who would sign a pledge to reduce their personal greenhouse gas emissions. A year ago this last July, Robert Redford and I, along with ICLEI, it's International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, hosted the Sundance Summit, a mayor's gathering on climate protection, and actually we're going to be having the 2nd annual Sundance Summit next month. 45 mayors from throughout the United States met with several experts, including former Vice President Al Gore, to learn the science of climate change and to strategize about actions we can all take to combat global warming. Coming together and sharing success stories is a crucial means of leveraging our successes into even greater positive effects. We've taken our case to the international community, presenting to municipal and business leaders from throughout the world at the United Nations Conference on Climate Change in New Delhi, where I was sponsored by the US EPA, at the United Nations Conference in Buenos Aires, where I was sponsored by ICLE, as a consultant to the Assistance for Heads of State in London in preparation for the G8 summit, where Prime Minister Tony Blair designated climate change as one of two main agenda items, and the Chancellor, Prime Minister of Germany, Angela Merkel, just announced that her one main agenda item for the next G8 summit will be climate change. And we also presented at the Business and Sustainability Summit in Australia. Among the recognitions for our efforts have been the Distinguished Service Award from the Sierra Club, the Climate Protection Award from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and most recently the World Leadership Award a few months ago in London. Major companies are already proving that they can achieve huge reductions of carbon dioxide and save money doing it. So this myth of the Bush administration that it's going to be economically devastating to move progressively into a low carbon or no carbon economy has been disproven by both the corporate community and by other national governments. DuPont has reduced global warming gas emissions by 67% and saved $2 billion in doing it, primarily through finding greater efficiencies. BP, which used to be known as British Petroleum and which now markets itself as Beyond Petroleum, invested $20 million to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 20%, and they saved $650 million. Other nations have also proven that existing technologies can combat disastrous climate disruption. Germany's Renewable Energy Source Act and Biomass Ordinance, as well as its effort to install photovoltaic panels on many municipal buildings, have helped reduce its emissions of global warming pollutants by about 20% since 1990. Denmark generates 20% of its electricity by wind. Denmark's doing that while we're cutting off the tax credits and stopping a wind farm at the mouth of Spanish Fork Canyon. It doesn't make any sense. Think of what it could do for our economy, our state's economy, our national economy, if we would follow Denmark's example. Not only do they generate 20% of their electricity by clean, renewable wind, but nearly half of the world's wind turbines are now produced by Danish companies. Manufacturing associated with wind power employs approximately 20,000 people in Denmark and contributes nearly 3 billion euro to the Danish economy. The City of Toronto has implemented a wide variety of energy-saving initiatives that save the city over $7.5 million annually from reduced energy consumption, with a 20% reduction in global warming gas emissions. There is no question that although much progress is being made in many cities, with 300 mayors now who have signed up to our climate protection agreement and committing to make the kinds of reductions we've been talking about tonight, and a few states throughout the nation getting on board, but unfortunately not Utah yet, the United States federal government is lagging far behind in obtaining greater efficiencies, such as more aggressive fuel efficiency standards for automobile manufacturers, and in developing and incentivizing alternative, clean, and renewable sources of energy. We have the means to make real positive differences. Yet, by all nations, all businesses, and all individuals working collaboratively, we can meet the challenges of global warming, energy dependence, national security vulnerabilities, destabilizing fuel price fluctuations, poor air quality, and adverse impacts on the public health. Working together, we can make a better, more secure, safer future for all. Thank you. Well, we faced tremendous opposition to our light rail system before it was built in 1999. Notice the headline here reflecting a call for our transit director's termination because he had the audacity to advocate for a light rail system. Now the light rail system has expanded to 19 miles with more to come in the future, including a heavy rail commuter system that will eventually connect cities and towns along a 100-mile corridor. Ridership of our light rail system has far exceeded even the most optimistic projections. On average, 125,000 Utah residents board the bus or light rail trains every day. And this is a great example of leadership. These people hung in there. They were tough. There was adamant opposition. There was a vote, a thumbs down vote on increasing sales tax in Salt Lake County to finance it. These people persevered. They got the first line in. That was so successful. We got the line in up to the University of Utah and now the Medical Center. And because of the tremendous success, now those who once were so adamantly opposed to it, and by the way, you don't hear that kind of opposition to it anymore. Now we've got it in place. Those people who were opponents are now clamoring for it in their communities and in 3 of the most conservative counties on planet Earth, Weber, Davis, and Salt Lake counties. The voters, because of the success of this line, voted for a sales tax increase to be devoted solely to transit, and we have another initiative coming up on the ballot in November. Legislatures played around with it, so we don't know exactly what we're voting for, unfortunately. But the polls showed that when the Salt Lake County Council was proposing to have a slight tax increase, it was overwhelmingly supported by the people. So once people see the successes, once they can visualize it, once they see it elsewhere, they understand the benefits that it can bring to their communities and the benefits in their own quality of life. No matter our own successes, we will effectively combat climate change only if we advocate so that other governments, businesses, and individuals join with us in doing what they can to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. We get out as much as we can to speak with young people about sustainability and what each of us can do to make this a better, healthier world. I work with student activists who at the University of Utah led the charge to increase tuition by $1 for the purchase of clean, renewable energy. We organize fun, community-oriented activities to encourage environmentally friendly behaviors. Every year we have Mayor's Bike to Work Day. Our local biking community is now comprised of very effective advocates for more access to safe bicycling opportunities throughout our city. On February 16, 2005, the date on which the Kyoto Accord went into effect, we had a Lick global warming celebration at a local ice cream shop. And we gave away free ice cream and a compact fluorescent bulb to all those who would sign a pledge to reduce their personal greenhouse gas emissions. A year ago this last July, Robert Redford and I, along with ICLEI, it's International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, hosted the Sundance Summit, a mayor's gathering on climate protection, and actually we're going to be having the 2nd annual Sundance Summit next month. 45 mayors from throughout the United States met with several experts, including former Vice President Al Gore, to learn the science of climate change and to strategize about actions we can all take to combat global warming. Coming together and sharing success stories is a crucial means of leveraging our successes into even greater positive effects. We've taken our case to the international community, presenting to municipal and business leaders from throughout the world. At the United Nations Conference on Climate Change in New Delhi, where I was sponsored by the US EPA, at the United Nations Conference in Buenos Aires, where I was sponsored by ICLEI, as a consultant to the Assistance for Heads of State in London in preparation for the G8 summit, where Prime Minister Tony Blair designated climate change as one of 2 main agenda items, and the Chancellor, Prime Minister of Germany, Angela Merkel, just announced that her one main agenda item for the next G8 summit will be climate change. And we also presented at the Business and Sustainability Summit in Australia. Among the recognitions for our efforts have been the Distinguished Service Award from the Sierra Club, the Climate Protection Award from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and most recently the World Leadership Award a few months ago in London. Major companies are already proving that they can achieve huge reductions of carbon dioxide and save money doing it. So this myth of the Bush administration that it's going to be economically devastating to move progressively into a low carbon or no carbon economy has been disproven by both the corporate community and by other national governments. DuPont has reduced global warming gas emissions by 67% and saved $2 billion in doing it, primarily through finding greater efficiencies. BP, which used to be known as British Petroleum and which now markets itself as Beyond Petroleum, invested $20 million to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 20%, and they saved $650 million. Other nations have also proven that existing technologies can combat disastrous climate disruption. Germany's Renewable Energy Source Act and Biomass Ordinance, as well as its effort to install photovoltaic panels on many municipal buildings, have helped reduce its emissions of global warming pollutants by about 20% since 1990. Denmark generates 20% of its electricity by wind. Denmark's doing that while we're cutting off the tax credits and stopping a wind farm at the mouth of Spanish Fork Canyon. It doesn't make any sense. Think of what it could do for our economy, our state's economy, our national economy, if we would follow Denmark's example. Not only do they generate 20% of their electricity by clean, renewable wind, but nearly half of the world's wind turbines are now produced by Danish companies. Manufacturing associated with wind power employs approximately 20,000 people in Denmark and contributes nearly €3 billion to the Danish economy. The City of Toronto has implemented a wide variety of energy-saving initiatives that save the city over $7.5 million annually from reduced energy consumption, with a 20% reduction in global warming gas emissions. There is no question that although much progress is being made in many cities, with 300 mayors now who have signed up to our climate protection agreement and committing to make the kinds of reductions we've been talking about tonight, and a few states throughout the nation getting on board, but unfortunately not Utah yet, the United States federal government is lagging far behind in obtaining greater efficiencies, such as more aggressive fuel efficiency standards for automobile manufacturers, and in developing and incentivizing alternative, clean, and renewable sources of energy. We have the means to make real positive differences. Yet, by all nations, all businesses, and all individuals working collaboratively, we can meet the challenges of global warming, energy dependence, national security vulnerabilities, destabilizing fuel price fluctuations, poor air quality, and adverse impacts on the public health. Working together, we can make a better, more secure, safer future for all. Thank you.